Do you want to start us off, Ali?
Yeah, let me read. I'm sure everyone has read, but just to make sure. So, you're a concerned parent about what your 13-year-old child is looking up on the internet. You care about their health and well being. Should you monitor their history and social media activities? If yes, why? And what age is appropriate to stop monitoring? Interesting question.
Right. Let's go around the table.
Let's
Mr.
hope everyone is over 18.
Yes.
First of all.
Bay, young boy, go take a seat. This is my couch. Thank you. Let's start with, and I think we have a lot of people, Ali, so I wonder if we should go around the table or should we ask others to raise their hands?
I think we could do a raise of hand. I think it would be
Okay, so
appropriate and just to control the sound as well.
as you can see, there on the right hand side, bottom right, there is a allow raise hand. I want you all to click on it if you have something to say. Challenge yourself, challenge your beliefs, challenge your ideas, and let's get this going.
So who's first? I saw a hand, Dr. Sam.
No, we're gonna look at participation, Ali. So if you look at host tools, there's a host panel. Mr. Walt, you're first. Megaphone is yours.
Okay. Okay. Well, for one thing, yes, I think you should monitor your child's history. Social media right now has turned into can cause the FBI to put their foot in your door. And when I was the age to stop monitoring is when that child is out my house. As long as you in my house, I'm gonna monitor because there's also repercussions. Even though I might not be a part of his social media, some of the things that he say could bring attention to my house, and so I will monitor it. And what age is when he walks out my door, when he's no longer got his knees under my table, is when I stop monitoring.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I think Altspace is experiencing a little bit of a technical
With
difficulty.
what? I was just flying. I was just flying around.
Okay.
Okay, next person. Thank you,
The interruptions
Mr.
as
Walt.
well.
Where are the interruptions?
Oh, did you hear me?
I heard everything you
That's good.
said, Mr. Walt.
Yes.
Thank you. We then have Shorty. You are next in line. Megaphone is
Okay.
yours.
Thanks. Absolutely. Especially at 13 years old. I think it's a parental responsibility to know what your child is looking at. Internet is a dumpster fire. You have to be aware. But as far as like when to cut off the monitoring, well, yes, I agree. When they leave the house, I would think that by the time they're 18 or 19, if you've been aware, you probably have a good wherewithal of what your child is experiencing. So, depending on their path and their social circle, you could probably start to lessen up on some of those rules, maybe occasionally checking in or trying to have an open dialogue about that. But that's just listening the reins, not letting the reins go. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, what age? I mean, like, I technically you don't become you're mentally not an adult until 25. So I could like 30. You can monitor as long as you're just kidding. But yeah, I would say by the time they move out, but 18-ish, you can start to let go of the reins if you feel they're responsible.
I hear so many times with different people sharing their moral and values for bringing up their kids. But, the one thing that I feel that they forget is asking themselves, how were they as kids? What were they searching at a young age? And
Oh,
probably not
absolutely.
you, Shorty, but like, I think I
No,
started, I think
I was doing
yeah.
I was doing awful things at 13 years old on the internet, speaking to totally inappropriate people about inappropriate topics and looking up stuff I had no business looking up. So I would not trust my 13-year-old self with further than like a leash would let me out. So I'm just speaking. That is based on my own experience, and if I'm passing those genes along
And
to that child,
I mean, look, that was your experience, and I can already share that that was my experience as well. And we turned out quite okay. I know I haven't opened the table, but sometimes I do mention out. So just like have a think of what you did as a kid. I think I was 12 when I started watching porn, and I'm happy to say that. So yeah, Shorty, thank you very much. We then have Mushi. Megaphone is yours.
Okay. I think if the child is 13, I would monitor like what they're watching on the internet. I would definitely monitor who they are talking to. Like even up to they are 18. I'll probably ease back around 18. But when it comes to actually looking up stuff and things like that, I would probably monitor up to their 15, because I mean, those are the years that you're actually going to start learning things, and I don't really want to have to be the one to sit them down and be like, yeah, so these are the birds and the bees, when they already know about it on the internet. I mean, they're going to end up looking it up anyways, either with my permission or their own. So they have the freedom to do whatever they want on that end, but definitely on who they associate with and who they talk to.
I saw a meme. Thanks, Mushi. That you reminded me of, and that is there was a dad who felt like he was ready to tell his son about the birds and the bees, and so he went to the son's room, and the son was about 11 years old, and he said, "Sorry, son, today I'm going to tell you about birds and the bees and sex, and that's going to be our discussion." And the son says, "All right, Dad, what do you want to know?"
Exactly. I mean, it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. But they know more than us nowadays. Quizhead.
The only.
Yeah, hi. In my opinion, a 13-year-old child has no self-judgment to know what's right and what's wrong. I mean, you have, especially when a person is a minor, he has no self-reference to know what is right and what is wrong. I mean, if he's speaking with someone on a chat or WhatsApp or whatever, it could be like it could be like someone trying to, you know, to make some sexual assault or whatever. So of course, and definitely, I would watch this, and because I'm basically might save his life. That's it.
It's a good way of thinking it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Future Queen. Can't wait to hear what you have to say.
What's up? I think it's a violation of privacy to monitor that, and so I wouldn't monitor it until like maybe before they're 10 years old. You might want to take a little peek, but I wouldn't be concerned because I knew what I was doing at that age. And I was like on my 13th, I was like stripping to guys when illegal, but which sounds messed up.
Yeah.
But
and
I'm chill now.
I mean,
I was looking at awful stuff, but I knew what it was.
I mean, I've got to agree. Like, you got to think about the kind of effects that will take on when you invade a child's privacy and what you change within the dynamics of the family with every decision that you make for the child. Because you don't know what long-term effects will lead to. They might become highly rebellious by when you're invading their privacy. They might become highly insecure. They might not grow up at all and remain a child and feel that they have no form of independence. So, I mean, I do have probably more agreements with what Future Queen. Thank you. Keep raising your hand if you have something to say, and then we'll open to discussion. Lou. Sorry, we do have a 2-minute cutoff, but Future Queen, I'll get back to you. Just raise your hand again. It'll be all yours. Yes, Lou.
Alright, so everyone's saying, oh, if I had my kid, I'd raise him this way, if I had my... Well, is it really your choice, though? Because kids are smart. Don't think we give them enough credit. Because I'll tell about my personal experience. When my parents found out I was watching porn because they looked at my history. So I started clearing my history. And then my parents said, oh, they were going to go to the ISP and like see everything they were doing that. So I bought myself a VPN, so they couldn't. So no matter what you do, kids are going to find a way around it. They always have, they always will. So this conversation's kind of pointless.
Let me just intervene there. This conversation is not pointless, Lou. This conversation, you have brought some form of new common sense and logic that you had embedded into your mind, into others now, where we are now growing new synapses. Our brain is changing. We're thinking out loud. We're thinking with new ideas. So what you've done is you've brought good information into our minds and possibly a new form of common sense. And others might have a rebuttal towards why they are against what you believe based on their upbringing. Everybody's beliefs, upbringing, cultures, traditions, and way of morals and values are completely different to each other's. And they are right and they are wrong. But I do like what you said, except at the end.
I'd have to agree.
But like, maybe this is a bit of an extreme one, but if you really don't want your kids exposed to that stuff, don't give them the internet. Like, because no matter what restrictions you put on it, they're going to find a way around it. So the only way you're going to get them not to experience that stuff, just don't give it to them. Like, how many of you have been annoyed when you go into a world and it's full of, like, 10-year-olds screaming about nonsense? And just, it'd be better for everyone, just stop your kids from going on it.
In my opinion, even if you do stop them from giving them the internet, Wi-Fi, for example, or Wi-Fi code, as long as they have mobile phones, if you want to get hold of them, that is, they still have data. They can still go onto the internet. Of course, they have limited access to it, not so much as they would under Wi-Fi circumstances. So
Yeah, I mean, Lou, if you found a way to get into... If you found a way to get into VPN, which most of the adults in this room probably don't know about, or on Facebook, it means that you would do whatever it takes to answer your desires within what you want to do within the realms. Okay, next person. We have alt person.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of really valid ideas and thoughts. So what I was gonna like, that was one of the first things I thought was what you said earlier about, like, you know, in all these kinds of situations, I always like to first think how I would react in those shoes, you know. And when I was a kid, I knew more about computers than my family. You know, at 13, they were coming to me to show them how to use them. So yeah, there was no way that they were gonna really keep me from getting anywhere I wanted to go, but they were always really good at communicating with me, and I think that's really where it comes to is being able to educate your children, being able to communicate with your children, have good, solid relationships with them, because then when they see something that they don't understand, you could explain it to them. And really, you know, your job as a parent, I feel like the most important job is getting your children ready to become adults. And so this is like this is the beginning of that. This is like from the adolescence on is when, like, they already know right from wrong by the adolescence. They know that. They've learned that when they were little, and now it's time to, like, ingrain, like, concepts for survival, for surviving in, you know, the jungle, in the real world. And so part of that is letting them kind of go free, and then also making sure they know that you're there. Like, if they need you for anything, if they need you to explain stuff, if they need you to, you know, bail them out from something, that you're there to help them. But you don't want to be so, you know, hovering over them so much though that they feel like you're a hindrance more than a help. Because again, you want to have that. Yes, you know, because what happens is kids are naturally rebellious, because you know they're really little adults, and even though we still see them as kids, they see themselves as adults. They think they're grown up, and so the more you try to hold them down, the more they want to rebel, the more they want to break loose. Yes. So yeah, again, I think education, communication, those are the keys, and that's and again, like I said before, that's the most important job as a parent. Like everybody who's an adult that is not a very well-functioning adult, I think it all goes back to their home life, whether or not they had decent parents that took care of them, that taught them what they needed to learn, or if they had parents at all. A lot of the kids or a lot of the adults in the prison system, were orphaned. They didn't have people taking care of them, teaching them right from wrong, and so they learned it in all kinds of weird places. They learned them in orphanages. They learned it on the streets. Yeah. And so they ended up becoming not very well-functioning adults. And so, yeah, that's what I think it goes back to, is just being there to educate and to communicate and let them know that you're like their partner and you're not their enemy.
I think with the right and wrong, where you said adolescents understand right from wrong, I do agree with that, where you kind of feel what's right and wrong, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to do the wrong. Because when you're an adolescent and you're new in life, you're going to experiment. You are curious about certain things. You might go off the rails. You might do something illegal, even though it's wrong. And the best you can do, I guess, is to educate, communicate, and let them know. But I think the more you restrict them, the more rebellious and the more they want to do the wrong because they are not allowed to do it, And that goes back to the freedom.
Stop, doing wrong things, after childhood, they still do things that aren't completely, right or accepted by society. People keep doing that as adults.
Got it.
And that doesn't necessarily make them bad people. There's different levels, there's gray areas. Sometimes people do, sometimes people speed. They know a lot of people speed. Because they know that's not right. They know that it's dangerous. They know that it could, affect other people in a negative way. But they do it. They feel like they can. It's not that big of a deal. It's only a couple of miles faster. It's really important that I get to work. So people don't stop it. As children, we constantly make decisions that could have negative and positive impacts on our lives and on others.
Thanks, all person. Hold that thought. Dr. Sam.
Timon, this is an exceptionally difficult question. I tend to agree with Future Queen, is that do you as a parent have the right to invade in your child's privacy? So that's one separate issue. Then I put on my scientist hat and I say to myself, but hold it, this child of 11, 12, 13 years of age, that brain, that hard drive is still being uploaded with information, and children are very impressionable and are influenced very quickly by somebody who is a senior or a celebrity. So I don't have an answer, but I think the trick is, and I think Altspace made this quite clear, is that from as early as you can is to communicate with your children, is to gain the trust of your children, and to preempt situations. So let me tell you a situation that I had. No, you know what? I'll discuss that situation later on. But this is my feeling. So I allowed my children quite a lot of latitude to do what they like. But my children trusted me and would come to me and say, Dad, I'm going on to a porn site. Dad, I've gone onto the site that's got a lot of violence on it. So we had that open communication, and there was a mutual trust. But parents who lack parental skills can find themselves in trouble.
Great. Thank you. We then have Jay Whitty and the three doppelgangers at the back. Welcome to the Moral Dilemma. This is the first event. And basically, this is a discussion where we mention a dilemma, and then we go around the table, sharing our thoughts, experiences, and ideas. And then we open the table to those who would like to rebuttal others. So feel free to raise your hand if you have something to say. This is the second dilemma before we move to the third. Also, I see we've got a lot more people than I thought in the first event. So we will be going a little bit over time. And I'll be probably making this event an hour and a half instead of an hour, as we're still trying to get to grasps with the template and how many people are interested. So doppelgangers, and you know who I'm talking about, you can raise your hand if you have something to say. Jay Whitty, the megaphone is yours.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So on this issue, I believe that you should, you know, kind of monitor what your children are doing, because at the end of the day, legally, you are their guardian, you know, and so you're their guardian until, you know, I guess they're 18 or whatever. So it is your responsibility to protect them. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be overbearing. See, there's a difference between overbearing, and then there's a difference between protecting, because you as an adult, you have more experience in life, and you've seen, you know, a lot of things that have happened in life that can, you know, consequences of certain actions. So you monitoring what your children are doing, it's not necessarily, you know, trying to invade their privacy. It's because you're trying to protect them, and you don't want them to make the same mistakes that you did, or at the very least, you want them to be aware of the consequences. So just kind of piggybacking of what some of, you know, everybody's been saying, is that you have to communicate with your child. You understand? You have to, like, if you see something that's kind of like, you know, kind of raises a red flag, you know, you want to talk to them about that. You don't want to just necessarily bear down on them and say you shouldn't be doing that. You have to explain to them the consequences, you know, of those things. You know what I mean? Ingrain, you know, that there's consequences to certain actions, so that it'll at least be in the back of their head, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, everybody has their own will, and, you know, you have the decision, you know, to do the right thing or do the wrong thing, you know. So I do believe that it is important to be aware of what your children are doing, because at the end of the day, God forbid, they're, you know, they're online, and, you know, well, okay, let's say this. Let's say you say you take the route, well, all right, well, I'm just going to let them do them. I'm not going to monitor what they're doing, you know, let them do them or whatever. And then there happens to be that one day where you know, let me just see what they're doing. You go and you see that, you know, there's a chat history between your 13-year-old child and a 50-year-old man trying to solicit your child and trying to meet them. Had you have seen that by, you know, monitoring what your child is doing, you know, there's a lot of things that could have been prevented, you know, because the internet is a dangerous place. You understand? It goes much further than just pornography. You understand? Pornography is not the most dangerous thing on the internet. You know, there are predators out there, you know, looking, you know, for negligent parents, not monitoring them, hoping that their parents aren't monitoring what they're doing on the internet, you know, so they can take advantage of a young mind, you know, because children are impressionable, you know. So at the end of the day, you know, being somewhat protective over your children, it's not the worst thing in the world. And love isn't always just trying to be kind and just trying to be nice and just trying to patty cake with them. Love is protecting too. Love isn't just, you know, always just being nice. Sometimes there's things called tough love, you know. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where I stand. I say that you're the protector, you know. You have to have that open communication with your child. Let them know what's right and what's wrong. Don't just tell them, because I come from a day and age where it's you shouldn't do that, you know, you shouldn't have did that, but there was no explanation after that. I wish somebody would have explained to me more why I shouldn't do the things that I've done. Would have, you know, caused me a lot of would have helped me along the way not to face certain consequences. So that's where I stand.
Okay, so I like how you've taken an empathetic approach towards the situation, and I'll go by a quote that I kind of live with, and that was by Johnny Depp, or I believe was Johnny Depp, and that is, the problem is not the problem. The problem is how you're going about the problem. And if you are able to have effective communication with an empathetic, but also a respectable and trustworthy tonality and approach to how to monitor the child's behavior, then you could do it in a way that the child will not rebel against you. So it's also how you go about it, you know, with trying to protect your children, and how you are going to be issuing out tough love, but not in such a way that your child disowns you, right? Thank you. Next, we're going to go with, who is there? We have Future Queen again. Welcome. Hello.
I was really liking some of what Lee says and some of what Alt Person says, and going all the way back, it's very, very easy to get VPNs and get around your parents, and I agree that you do need to build a relationship of trust with each other, and I think monitoring violates that. And if you go back, a lot of it is talking with friends, and there's lots of forums where kids talk with other kids, which I think needs to be private, because if you talk about sensitive issues, it can make it worse, parents finding out about that. And before the times of the internet, you wouldn't have parents sticking microphones on kids when they go out and play and talk in other situations. So.
All right. The table is now open to discussion, to agree, disagree, but you have to raise your hands and then tell us what you agree and disagree with. So we have Alt Person.
Hey. Yeah, actually there's something I was going to say before, but I'll come back to that in a second. And then, but I wanted to say something about what Jay Whitey 365 was saying. And that is in regards to, you know, pedophiles and all that, and all kinds of, you know, strange people, like there could be Saudi princes, you know, that are asking for money, all that kind of stuff that can happen. I think that goes back to the talk that a lot of us probably had about strangers, you know, knowing not to talk to strangers, knowing that if somebody comes up to you to try to talk to you about certain things, get with me or whatever, let me know that somebody is talking to you that you don't know. Because I think that that's really important. Them knowing that you can't trust everybody. You know, like that was one of the first things my dad used to teach me when I was a kid. It was like, you know, don't trust everybody. There's people that you can trust and there's people you can't. And if you're ever confused about who you can talk to, you come talk to me. Don't ever volunteer information about yourself. That was a big thing he taught me. You know, if somebody asks you for information and you don't know them, you don't give them anything, and you always come to me. You know, and that, I think that's really an important lesson. And even, you know, in the internet age, it still holds value, which back then, you know, it wasn't as prolific as it is today. But another thing that I was going to say before, though, is what worries me now, as far as the current state of affairs with children, is, you know, when you're in school, when you're at that age, adolescents, teens, you have all these hormones. You're really concerned about people liking you. You're really concerned about people being attracted to you. You're concerned about fitting in, all that stuff. And the things that I've been hear a lot about now is, like, you know, people sending each other pics of you know, themselves, like, you know, some kind of nude pic or parts of their body pic. And what I think is a really important thing to teach your kids is to let them know that that's, you know, the ramifications of that. What can happen to them if they're caught with something like that, and that it's not appropriate. And you don't want parts of yourself just being thrown out there for everybody to see, because that's huge now. Like, I mean, kids can get completely, you know, suspended, or, like, you know, just taken out of school completely. You can get incarcerated. You can go to juvie. There's all. It just depends on where you're at, but it's really there. People are not forgiving of kids, you know, doing anything, you know, that's criminal in any way. Like there was a time where if you were a criminal, you did certain things, they would just slap you on the wrist and be like, okay, he's just a kid. We'll teach him, you know, to do better next time. But it's not like that anymore, man. They, like, lock kids up, and it's crazy.
Cool. Thanks, alt person.
So,
We then have Mr. Walt, finally. And if you have something to say or rebuttal, then feel free to raise your hand before we move on. Yes, Mr. Walt.
Okay, I definitely agree with Alt's person and Jay Whitty. But see, we got a full spectrum of things that can happen on the internet. You know, not just being a pedophile or sex trafficking and all that. We got a full spectrum. And as a parent, it become complacent on being one step ahead. And children are naturally inquisitive. And communication is vital. But with that being said, you tell them not to do it, they gon' do it. They gonna find out why I can't do it. And so we become complacent because we got changing times every day. Technology changes. There's a new scam out there. There's something new out there. And when the issue of privacy, well, you know, when you're under 18 years old and you're my responsibility, the definition of privacy will be compromised, especially when, you know, I'm going to be held responsible for your actions. Now, yeah, sure, there will be repercussions for a child under 18, but the biggest one is going to be in the household. I mean, I certainly don't want the FBI putting their foot in my door because somebody was on the internet that was 13 years old pretending like they were 27 and plotting the overthrow of Humpty Dumpty. You know, we can't become complacent. Sure, we want to trust them, but we were their age too, and could we be trusted at that age? No, we could not. I mean, it's not like we wanted to be distrustful. It's just that we was inquisitive. And